Welcome to Prevent Cancer Naturally, another of our shows in the LifeStart Seminars series. I'm Dr. David DeRose, board-certified specialist in internal medicine and preventive medicine, your host, guiding you through this very important subject. Oh, no doubt you've been confronted with cancer. If you haven't experienced cancer in your own life, the odds are that someone around you has. It is now the leading cause of death in many segments of the population of the Western world. Lifestyle and cancer, though, are two things that actually interrelate, and the good news is that lifestyle choices can dramatically decrease your risk of cancer. Indeed, you can, in many cases, prevent cancer naturally. That's not just my message, it's an encouraging message that cancer experts, oncologists, and cancer researchers are sharing. One of the seminal publications on this topic, Food, Nutrition, Physical Activity, and the Prevention of Cancer, an extensively documented work put out by the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research. It was just last year that I was invited to speak in Europe at an international conference. In addition to giving a plenary lecture, I was also going to be giving a workshop. I was especially delighted to hear that that workshop would be given in concert with Dr. Mark Connor. Dr. Connor, a surgeon from Europe, was someone I had met many years ago. I had not seen him in several decades. So I was looking forward to seeing Mark and working together with him. We had corresponded electronically some prior to the conference that was held in Prague in the Czech Republic. But when I got there, I was shocked to see Dr. Connor. I mean, this guy was significantly older than I was, and when I was looking at him, I mean, he looked like he was much younger than me. Now, I'll tell you, this is something that will definitely get your attention when it comes to lifestyle and the benefits you can get from following healthy lifestyle practices. Now, some of you are wondering, you say, well, Dr. DeRose, I thought you were following a healthy lifestyle. Well, maybe I should tell you the rest of the story. It turned out that the Mark Connor I knew, the surgeon, was the father of the fellow I was presenting with. I didn't realize that until we were actually there together in Europe, but I was taken aback to see his youthful appearance. I mention that because the material that I'm sharing with you is actually largely gathered by Dr. Connor. It was such an amazing presentation that when we were talking about the LifeStart seminar series, I said, you know, the material that Dr. Connor shared with those other health professionals would be just perfect for sharing with lay people with just a little bit more explanation, perhaps a little bit more detail, and maybe highlighting some things in a different way that we wouldn't do for a professional audience. So with that in mind, if you're excited about this presentation as I am, thank Dr. Connor, thank the folks at the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research who have really highlighted these important lifestyle factors. If you don't like something in the program, it's probably my fault. You know, it's easy to take something that's great and not always follow through on that highest level of performance. Remember, though, the title of the work that we're referencing, Food, Nutrition, Physical Activity, and the Prevention of Cancer. Just stop with the title. If you've been engaged already by the LifeStart seminars, you're already thinking, the mind is working, you're saying, this is sounding like it fits right in with the LifeStart seminar concept, and indeed it does. If this is your first time listening to a presentation from me or anyone else on this series, let me tell you, LifeStart is a life-changing paradigm. It highlights 9 essential elements that can revolutionize your health, and we're going to see that those 9 elements, at least we'll highlight some of them, and showing how they actually have a bearing on preventing cancer. And if you do get cancer, we'll find that many of these very same principles can help you get the upper hand. We'll be sharing some of that literature with you as well. LifeStart. If you haven't heard it before, or if you have, let me just quickly walk you through those 9 elements. L stands for liquids. These are beverage choices. They make a big difference in the area of cancer. We'll see that as we go along. I stands for interpersonal relations or interpersonal relationships. Hopefully, you've had the privilege to go through this series with someone else. If that sounds strange to you because you just found the LifeStart Seminars website, let me tell you this. If you're not already logged in, go to LifeStartSeminars.com. There are many communities throughout the United States and abroad that are sharing these materials. They are actually offering these seminars in community centers, in churches, in other places where people can come together, business settings. If you can connect with other people, the likelihood of you making lifestyle changes and sticking with them will be increased. So keep that in mind. So L for liquids, I for interpersonal relations, the F stands for foods, and of course that's going to be highlighted. First word in the title of the work that inspired Dr. Connor to give that excellent presentation on which we're basing this, a synopsis of that material. Then you've got E. E stands for exercise. We'll touch on that subject as well. And then as you go through the LifeStart paradigm further, you've got S for sunlight, T for temperance. Temperance is the idea of total avoidance of things that are harmful and using things that are good in moderation. We move on then to air, good fresh air. We'll talk some about that as well. Rest is the R, and then T for trust in divine power. With that background, let me just mention one other thing. On our LifeStart Seminars website, you can get an overview of the entire LifeStart paradigm. It's a free ebook. I invite you to go there if you've not already picked up your copy and just get that. It'll help you crystallize this LifeStart approach in your mind. The other free resource I want to mention, if you're engaged by the topic of cancer, we've got a study guide available also free of charge on the LifeStartSeminars.com website. Well, let's move on now and talk in some detail about the exciting information that's coming out about cancer and how it is preventable with lifestyle choices. 10 key recommendations grow out of that work of the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research. Let's just put those right out there at the beginning. The first one is body weight, or overweight more precisely. The second one is physical activity. These are things we want to pay attention to if we want to prevent cancer. The third one is energy-dense foods. The next topic that they highlight are plant foods. Then they talk about animal foods. So these are, one set of foods derived from plant sources, another set of foods derived from animal sources. We'll find they have different effects if you're not already aware of that. Then they look at liquids like alcoholic beverages, salt and preservation, and then dietary supplements. So these are some of the areas that we'll touch on, looking at the current research as summarized in that excellent research book. Now, one of the issues that I just have to mention with you is sometimes drawing these connections between lifestyle and cancer are not the easiest. And the reason is we're not typically doing lifestyle studies of people with cancer. We're having to just observe people and then say, okay, here are these people that developed cancer, here are those that didn't, let's compare them and see if we can find differences in their lifestyle. Sometimes we do that in what's called a case control study. That's where we start by identifying the cases, individuals with, let's say, breast cancer, and then we try to find women who appear to be similar in all other respects except they don't have breast cancer. You try to look at differences then. Those studies are helpful, but they're not as powerful as what we call longitudinal or cohort studies. That's where we follow a group of people over time. We'll be sharing with you research like that, and you say, look, at these two groups of people, they look the same. We follow them over time. This person gets prostate cancer, this doesn't. What was different? And when you look at lots of people, sometimes you can draw some very interesting conclusions. So here's the three big ones that we want to talk about, and this is what was highlighted in that very important work. Three big issues as far as cancer prevention: weight management, physical activity, and diet. Now you say, wait a minute. I mean, that sounds a lot like what I've heard you, Dr. DeRose, speak about in your Reversing Diabetes Natural series or presentation here in the LifeStart seminars. That's right. I mean, it's these very same fundamentals that set the stage for a host of diseases, but cancer is right on the list. And the point is, we can decrease our risk of cancer by changing our lifestyle. Now, before we go too far, I would be negligent not to put in bold letters one of the most important factors. It is embodied in that LifeStart paradigm. It's the letter A. A stands for, remember, fresh air. what is the single worst pollutant that people are exposed to today? Now, I know some of you, if you live in an industrial area, you say, oh, that factory over there, it just keeps spewing that junk out. I'm not saying that some of those industrial byproducts, whether they're in the air or the water, are not dangerous. I'm not saying that at all. But they pale in insignificance to this single air pollution device. It is the cigarette. That's right. Are you aware that scientists have identified over 7,000 chemicals in cigarette smoke? That's right, 7,000 chemicals. And when we're speaking about cancer, I just got to tell it to you, right out. There are 4 classes of chemicals in tobacco smoke that increase your likelihood of having cancer. There are things called, they're called carcinogens, but they're cancer-causing substances. Then there's co-carcinogens. So those are substances that work together with the carcinogen to cause cancer. Then there's tumor promoters that promote the growth of the cancer. And then, if that's not enough, there's chemicals that are called tumor accelerators. And those, you got it, speed up the growth of the cancer. Do you see this? How powerful tobacco smoke is in inducing cancer, not just in the lungs, not just in the voice box, in areas that are directly exposed to smoke, also in places like the bladder. That's right, the bladder. Those chemicals get into the bloodstream and they're shipped throughout the body. The kidneys. You increase your risk of cancer in multiple sites by cigarette smoking. If you needed another reason to quit, here it is. Get rid of the tobacco smoke and you will decrease your risk of cancer. We're talking about what? Prevent cancer naturally. If you're serious, you're going to get rid of the cigarettes. I think that's probably enough said, isn't it? Now, let me tell you one other thing. When you're a specialist in internal medicine and preventive medicine, it's not as dramatic and as glamorous a specialty as if you're a surgeon. If someone's on death's door and the surgeon does an operation and you survive, they say, oh, you saved my life, doctor. Listen, I'm very glad we have many wonderful surgeons in the world. But when you're a preventive medicine specialist, you're just trying to prevent disease. Let me put it this way. If you kept smoking, you developed a lung cancer, and by chance it was caught early. You realize that most lung cancers are caught at a point where they're not curable, and most people die within a very short time of being diagnosed with lung cancer. But let's say yours was caught early, surgeon goes in, maybe removes a lobe of your lung, and you're healed. You may have some difficulties because you already damaged the lungs with some emphysema. Now you've got, less lung volume and you're having some breathing difficulties, but you're alive and you're a survivor and you're just thanking that surgeon, saved your life. But now let me tell you something better that I can offer you. You haven't yet been diagnosed with cancer, but there is a statistical possibility that cancer has already begun in your lung. That's right, it is possible. If you keep smoking from this day onward, that practice of smoking is feeding the cancer, and you can end up coming down with the cancer and dying. If you stop right now, you'll stop feeding the cancer, your immune system can get the upper hand, and you can stay cancer-free for the rest of your life. You actually had an early lung cancer, could not be detected, wouldn't show up on an x-ray, wouldn't show up on a blood test, but because you listen to this program, Dr. DeRose encouraged you to stop smoking, you quit. You're not going to come to me and say, hey, Dr. DeRose, oh, I'm so glad to see you. You saved me from lung cancer, because you didn't know you had it. But isn't that much better than having your chest opened up, your ribs broken, having part of your lung removed? Okay, let's move on, because our focus is on other areas that were highlighted in that study. We talked about weight. When it comes to weight, the message is we should try to be as lean as possible within the normal range. Being too thin, we're not advocating anorexia nervosa. You understand what I'm talking about, okay? So if you're on a healthy lifestyle, if you're exercising regularly, if you're taking the time to eat good, healthy foods, giving yourself adequate time to eat meals, you're not going to be severely underweight, unless you have some disease process. And you will decrease dramatically your risk of a host of cancers. Let me give you some examples. One of those cancers is colon cancer. If you're carrying excess weight, if you are even diagnosed with colon cancer, Your likelihood of dying is increased by carrying those extra pounds. You see, carrying extra weight does a number of things. When you carry extra weight, it causes your body to be more insulin resistant. When you're insulin resistant, the pancreas pumps out more insulin. And insulin is actually a compound that feeds cancer. They say, wait a minute, Dr. DeRose, how can insulin be bad for us? We need insulin to live. Yes, you're exactly right. We need insulin to live, but we need it in modest amounts. If you have insulin resistance and your pancreas is pumping out large amounts of insulin, or you have diabetes and you're overweight and you're taking insulin shots, that insulin is really more than optimal for your body. You need it right now to keep your blood sugar controlled. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying cut back on the insulin, but I'm saying change your lifestyle. Lose some of that weight. You'll need less insulin, and insulin in excess feeds cancer. By the way, it's true with breast cancer as well. If a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer and she's overweight, she is going to have a worse overall survival. You get the picture? Whether it's breast cancer, whether it's colon cancer, excess weight ramps up a variety of processes. It's not just insulin that rises, it's also estrogen in women. So a woman who is overweight, she's going to have higher estrogen levels, she's going to be at greater risk of breast cancer and cancer of the womb, known as endometrial cancer. I know some of you guys are listening, you're saying, whew, boy, glad I'm a guy. I don't have to worry about endometrial cancer. Very low risk of breast cancer in men. I'm just sitting here easy even though I got a lot of weight on board. Listen, these compounds, these hormonal compounds, these growth-activating compounds are not limited to estrogen and insulin. There's another compound called IGF-1. It stands for insulin-like growth factor 1. Again, it feeds cancer. You're heavier, it ramps up IGF-1, and what happens? You increase your risk of colon cancer, you increase your risk of prostate cancer. You want to decrease your risk of cancer? You want to prevent cancer naturally? If you're carrying extra weight, you want to trim down. Well, let's move on to another very important concept in the LifeStart paradigm, and all the experts are talking about it. If you want to decrease your risk of cancer optimally, you need to be on a regular exercise program. The experts today are telling us 30 minutes every day of exercise. That's what you need to plan on. Now, to be honest with you, I often recommend my overweight patients shoot for an hour a day. Work up to that. If you're doing nothing, don't try to go out and walk for 60 minutes. And if you've got questions about the safety of exercise, by all means, speak with your physician. But most of us don't need a prescription to go shopping in Walmart, for example, right? And some of those stores can be pretty big. Or to go to the mall, that's even bigger, right? Did you need a prescription to walk in the mall? If you're able to do that, it's probably safe to walk at that same pace around your block. And by the way, the benefits of exercise are cumulative. They add up throughout the day. So when we speak about 30 minutes every day, you can do 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes there, until it adds up to 30 minutes. And all forms of physical activity protect against some cancers. That's really the take-home message. Do something. Be active. Cancer of the bowel, the colon. Powerful cancer protection if you're physically active. Just keep that in mind. How does exercise influence cancer? Well, it actually impacts it in many of the same ways that obesity impacts it. Only it reverses those processes. Exercise helps you lose weight. Exercise keeps blood estrogen levels lower. Exercise keeps IGF-1 levels lower. But exercise does something else interesting. Remember I mentioned this connection with colon cancer? Exercise speeds up transit time throughout the intestinal system. That means the bowels work better. If the bowels work better, if there are carcinogens in the bowel, it moves them through quicker so that there's less exposure to the bowel wall. Let me say carcinogens. I'm not eating any carcinogens. Let me just tell you, probably one of the most shocking things that I can tell you about carcinogens in the bowel. The very bile that your liver makes to digest fatty foods. Now, it actually doesn't digest it. Technically, it emulsifies. It helps it to mix with the intestinal contents. But the bile that is made by the liver, stored in the gallbladder, that bile is converted into carcinogenic compounds in the colon. It's most likely to be converted into large amounts of carcinogens if you're eating lots of animal products. If you're eating plant products, that process is limited significantly. Well, hey, that brings us to our next topic, and that is what kind of foods we eat. That's the F in LifeStart, and it's very important. Diet is huge. The researchers are telling us we should limit our consumption of energy-dense foods. Those desserts, those soft drinks, those pastries, those fast foods, you get the message. The opposite of calorie-dense foods are fruits and whole grains and vegetables. Processed foods tend to be more energy-dense than fresh foods. Make those fresh foods your friends. Those calorie-dense foods are feeding that epidemic of what? Weight gain. So you see how that all fits together. But let's look now more at some specific dietary choices that can make a difference as far as you getting the upper hand and never developing cancer in the first place. And let's talk about a good fat. If you've heard my series on the brain health revolution, you've heard me touting the benefits of omega-3 fat. They're great for your brain, but they also have cancer preventive properties. Did you know you can decrease your risk, if you're a man, of aggressive prostate cancer by increasing your amount of omega-3 fat intake? You say, Dr. DeRose, I'm headed right over to the fish market. Well, I recommend you get your omega-3 fats from something that doesn't tend to have the heavy metal toxins like are in the tissue of fish. I recommend you get it right from the source. That's right, fish do not make omega-3 fats. They only concentrate the omega-3 fats from plant sources. So get it from plants. Get it from flaxseed. By the way, you got to ground the flaxseed, grind it to get the benefit of the omega-3 fat. Get it from walnuts. Get it from soybeans. They're a modest source of omega-3 fat. So eat those whole plant foods, get those omega-3 fats, and they will actually help you get the upper hand when it comes to preventing cancer naturally. In fact, the researchers are all telling us, focus your attention on those plant foods. And here's some of the specific recommendations that expert groups are giving us. Eat unprocessed cereals or beans, pulses every meal. Did you catch that? Every meal. That means no white bread. Well, it doesn't mean you can never eat it, but listen. If you understand how powerful fiber is and phytochemicals, plant chemicals in preventing cancer, you're going to do what I did at one point in my life. I had become a vegetarian. I was eating lots of meat and living the average American lifestyle, and I got serious about this as a young adult. But even after I became a vegetarian, I was still eating some refined grain products. I was raised in an Italian home, so we had lots of white pasta. But when I started learning the science about the health-giving properties of fiber and phytochemicals, I'd look at that white pasta and I'd say, well, why would I want to fill my stomach with this when I could eat the whole grain variety? Now, granted, that whole grain pasta didn't taste very good at first. But once I got used to it, I preferred the whole grain to the white pasta. Are you catching the message? If you haven't heard it before, if you haven't heard my seminar on changing bad habits for good, listen, we can develop new enjoyments. Don't shy away from the optimal cancer preventive program because you say, well, I just couldn't live like that. I wouldn't enjoy life at all. I'd rather die of cancer early. You can develop new enjoyments. You can develop an enjoyment for those whole grains. Listen to some more of the recommendations. Eat at least 5 servings of non-starchy vegetables and fruits a day. So first they say eat the starchy ones, but the whole grains in their whole form. Whole plant foods eaten whole, as some of my friends like to say. And then with the other vegetables, 5 servings of non-starchy vegetables and fruits each day, and then limit your refined starchy foods. This will go a long way into preventing cancer. The research is very clear. It makes a difference. You eat these phytochemically rich things and you are eating an anti-cancer diet. Stock up on the legumes, the beans, stock up on the vegetables, the whole fruits. These are powerful foods in preventing cancer. You say, how do they work? Are you aware that some of the phytochemicals, some of the plant chemicals, actually just found in the whole plants, actually have the ability to detoxify carcinogens? That's right. You eat a cancer-producing compound, and those plant chemicals actually get in there and they just destroy that carcinogen. Plant foods also boost the health of the immune system. They can actually interfere with the work cancer tries to do in signaling the body to give it more blood. Plant foods can interfere with that. So the experts are telling us, eat more plant foods and do what? What do you think the corollary is? Eat less of those animal foods. Study after study showing connections between eating more meat and more cancer. So the message is pretty simple in the food department. We want to be plant eaters. The optimal diet is really a whole plant foods diet. And it's powerful. We got to mention one other thing that comes up in all the recommendations, and that is the emphasis on avoiding alcoholic beverages. Now, in the World Cancer Research Fund report, they talk about limiting alcoholic drinks. I will tell you they're being very gentle because many expert groups and many experts are saying if you're serious about decreasing your cancer risk as much as possible, you have got to leave the alcohol off. A large data set has been generated by the prospective study called the European Prospective Investigation into Cancer and Nutrition, abbreviated EPIC. They have found convincingly that any amount of alcohol consumption increases the risk of cancer, and the experts are telling us you better leave that off if you want to lower your risk of cancer optimally. Couple of other problems are worth noting. If you're stocking up on salty or salt-preserved foods, these are not your friends in the cancer department. And the other thing, it may seem to go without saying, but moldy cereals and legumes can contain carcinogenic substances. I do enjoy peanut butter, but it is something we do need to be careful of. Many producers are not ensuring that all those peanuts are free from mold. Probably best off making your own. The mold in peanuts has a particularly nasty compound called aflatoxin, which is a carcinogen. Well, dietary supplements are not recommended by expert groups, but one vitamin is recommended. It's vitamin D. Vitamin D can decrease your risk of a number of cancers, such as prostate, colon, breast, lung cancer. Get out in the sun. Don't burn. Don't get too much. If you can't get enough sunshine to make enough vitamin D and you've had your blood checked, take a supplement. There's a lot we can do to prevent cancer naturally. Hopefully you've enjoyed these high points. There's more great resources on our website, LifeStartSeminars.com. You can get personalized coaching help as well in many regions of the country and the world. You can get our free ebooks, our free study guide that goes with this, and you can get more of my presentations and more of our studies because we're interested in giving you a new start on your life. I'm Dr. DeRose.